Welcome to The Lens with me, Sarah Travers. The Lens is a business in the community podcast in partnership with One Young World. I'm really thrilled to introduce our guests today. They are Malcolm Gomersall, CEO of Grant Thornton UK, one of the country's leading multidisciplinary professional services firms with more than 5,500 partners and professionals providing assurance and financial advice to organisations across the public and private sectors. And joining Malcolm, we welcome May Asagba, who is the founder of CAIN Educational Foundation, an organisation based in Lagos, Nigeria, dedicated to empowering underprivileged Africans. Now, in this episode, we'll be discussing the role of business in education and the need to inspire people from a young age about the world of work in a world of opportunities, thus creating great social mobility. So let's get into the conversation. Malcolm and May, you are very welcome to The Lens.
Thank you.
So, Malcolm, as usual with all of our guests, we start with a little bit of background. So if we could start with you, first of all, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've come to be in your role at Grant Thornton. You can also explain a little bit about what your business does. And if you'd like to share a little bit about your family life, what you do out of work too, that would be super.
Okay, so by training, I'm a chartered accountant. I work here, Grant Thornton. We are, as you've just described, a kind of a broad church. We do everything from statutory audit for the public and private sector. We support high net worth individuals in their personal planning, and we do a whole pile of advisory services from helping people sell their business right through to asset tracing, where bad people do bad things and we help trace down their funds to repatriate back to the victims of those crimes. So it's a broad church as a firm. Me personally, I was born in South Yorkshire in Doncaster, a working class family. When I left school, I had no idea what on earth I wanted to do. So to avoid making a decision, I went to university, first in my family to go to university. At the end of my university degree, I still had no idea what on earth I wanted to do with my life. And I kind of fell into accountancy because it seemed to be another way to defer making a decision, because everybody told me if you trained to be an accountant, you could do everything or anything in your future life. So I entered the world of professional services a long time ago, with no expectation that I'd stay for very long, and yet I'm still in it. I love my job because I get to work with a whole pile of young people that keep me young, or make me feel younger anyway. I am the father of 3, 1 daughter, 2 sons. They are the most important thing in my life. Even if they ring in the middle of this call, I'll put you on hold to answer for them because they have their whole variety of now grown-up issues, which is just a privilege to be part of their life. I don't know, have I covered off what I was meant to?
You absolutely have. You're
Thank you.
being very modest there. I'm just wondering, what did you actually study at university?
I did economics, which is kind of like a broad base in business. You learn the basics of supply and demand and all of that sort of thing, which seems to be fairly fundamental to business. But yeah, so economics.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you in a minute, but I find that really interesting that you joined the firm and now look at you. You've done okay. May, if we could turn to you next of all,
Sure.
and, a different background in a different part of the world, but if you could share a little bit about who you are, your business, and your upbringing too.
Oh, sure. So I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, in a family that deeply valued education. I'm the first of 4 children and the only girl, so they also refer to me as the second mommy of the family. So after high school in Nigeria, I decided to go to the United States of America for college. I graduated with honors from Cornell University. And then while I was at Cornell, I started CAIN Educational Foundation, which is a nonprofit I run today. And for me, I was just asking the question, how do we redesign education so that where a child is born no longer determines what they become? I mean, I was able to go to Cornell because I got a full tuition scholarship. But then it was because my parents gave me a good foundational education in Nigeria, which many children do not have the privilege of getting. So today I run CAIN as the Chief Executive Officer, and we work across underserved communities in Lagos. In the largest underserved community, we established an educational center where we offer digital skills training, academic tutorials in major subjects like maths and English, high-speed internet, modern technology, mentorship, and career pathways for the children in this community. So we've seen children who did not know how to turn on a computer or type now master digital skills. Students who were struggling academically now graduating with distinctions. And we've also produced the first high school graduates and university students and family where education seemed possible. We've done over 13 projects and impacted over 14,000 young people. And alongside the work that I do, I also contribute to like policies and global conversations that shape the future of education and youth opportunity through consultations with UNESCO, UNICEF, and through some international stages like the One Young World and Microsoft. So really at the heart of everything that I do is just to expand access to quality education and digital opportunities so that young people in underserved communities can actually shape their own futures.
May, it is so commendable to hear your story, and even, more impressive. You founded CAIN Africa at the age of 21. So you just finished your own university experience, and yet you were straight in wanting to give back, not for profit. I need you to tell all of our listeners who'll be tuning in and wanting to know, is business doing enough? Can we do? Because obviously education and social mobility are so important to you. Just tell us why we all need to make this our issue.
True. So in developing countries, especially in African countries, I think the classroom is one of the few places where the lottery of birth can be rewritten in real time. I mean, none of us choose the families we're from. None of us choose the communities we're born into. So it's unfair for some people to have advantage and some people not have the advantage to be able to advance in life. And so that's why I'm deeply passionate about education and social mobility, but comes from both frustration and hope. Frustration at how much human potential is wasted just due to birth or due to the communities that they are born into, and hope because I have seen what actually happens when access is unlocked, even in the smallest way. People are able to climb the socioeconomic ladder if they're just given the right opportunities. So working on the ground in Nigeria, I meet young people who are incredibly capable, but just do not have the opportunity to change their circumstances. And when we think about education, it's not just about I graduated from this school. It's about giving people dignity, agency, and the power to choose a different path. So why should we, prevent people from having those opportunities? And so for me, it's not just also like giving them the opportunity to ascend the socioeconomic ladder. It's also a way to unlock economic advantages for different countries. So one that allows the citizens to bypass local limitations and access global opportunities. And honestly, I feel like if you see the transformation that education has up close, you cannot unsee it and you cannot help but just be passionate about it. Because when access is expanded at scale, we do not just change individual lives, we change families, we redefine what's possible for a nation and an entire generation. So I think this is something that we all need to be passionate about. And aside from being passionate about, we all need to invest actively in.
Wow. I mean, dignity, agency, the power to choose. Malcolm, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, it's inspiring, isn't it? And I couldn't agree more. When May talks about people coming in and then changing families, I'd go even further, changing communities, because those families are part of communities. And once people realize that things are possible, accident of birth isn't the thing that defines you, the ripple impacts are just fundamental for families, for communities, for parts of the world. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And inspiring words.
And in terms of Grant Thornton, Malcolm, maybe these are the biases that I have, but in terms of the professional services, the firm that you have in schools, accountancy isn't the obvious choice for many. Is that fair to say?
100%. Absolutely. It's not. It has a reputation still for being quite safe, quite middle class, quite posh. Yeah, I mean, that is a reputation that still exists. It's not the case, though. So as a profession for a number of years, we've been ultra focused on getting talent in from the broader world, from the broader economic environment. So something called Access Accountancy, which I was a patron of, that's about getting people in from different backgrounds and giving them the opportunity to do something that they never thought they could do. The getting in bit is something we've been working on as a profession for years, and the firm I represent has been working on that for years. Increasingly, though, the focus is on getting on, not just getting in. So picking up on May's point, you can bring people in, but if they fail, that has a negative impact. But you need to support them to get on and to succeed, because when you see somebody around you doing something different and succeeding, it raises the heads of everybody in that community to try and, well, maybe I could do that. And maybe I could do something that I didn't think I could do. And that fundamentally is my personal story. I never thought I could be a chartered accountant. I never thought I could exist in this world. But luckily, people took a risk on me and people supported me when I arrived. By a bit of luck and a lot of support, I've ended up where I am today.
And Malcolm, you mentioned there your getting in approach, your getting on approach. There's a third pillar, isn't there? Belonging.
Yeah, belonging. So getting on is about supporting people to understand the challenges of people from different backgrounds. Belonging is about the programs that you put in place to support people to be successful. Typically, people from very different backgrounds need a little bit more time and a little bit more support. If I go back in my career, I needed more time and more support. I needed to learn things which others didn't know, which others knew and I didn't. So I bought my first suits to go and be a chartered accountant. I realized I needed to press it. I didn't realize I needed to iron my shirt. I didn't realize that I needed to do this thing called active listening, where you nod when people are talking. I just didn't know those things. So belonging is about the support that you give to people for the world that are around them to help them learn to be successful. So the support goes in terms of the people that you are working with, educating them about what support people like me needed, and then helping people like me learn how to exist in this world.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, Malcolm, what you think, what practical steps businesses can take, just sharing some of your own experiences to influence social mobility. How can business make careers more visible and appealing to young people, especially in those sectors facing skills shortages right now? There are opportunities, perhaps.
Well, the flip side of everything that May said is that all businesses are looking for highly talented people. If they only look at 10% of what's available, then they're missing out on 90% of talent. So people talk to me about the business case for social mobility. It's not a business case, it's common sense. There are talented people who are in a world which we don't normally go to by professional services firms. They're typically going to red brick universities, and they're looking to recruit a certain sort of people. Half of our recruitment is from schools directly, people who can't afford to go to university, who are just as talented, but by accident of birth don't have the right or the opportunity that other people have. So it begins with just raise your head. If you're looking for talented people, look at the whole marketplace. And then the knock-on impacts that May described are there for society. If I looked, when I began my social mobility journey, it was to get involved after I became a partner. So the partners are business owners. There are 200 or so of us of the 5,500 you described who are partners. What I worked out when I became a partner is that I couldn't get into the firm that I was a partner in because of the degree requirements and the exam requirements that we had. So I would never have been able to get in to the firm that I was a partner in, which takes you to the basics. You must be doing something wrong in your recruitment strategy if you're excluding people who are already successful. So it began with look at the whole market, and then it's look at who's successful in your business and where did they come from, and take a risk on more people like that. I think those are the two fundamental no-brainers. Every business needs to look at things in that basis, and then to recognize that talent from different sources needs different support. We're not all the same. May and I will need different support in our lives to be successful. So don't treat everybody as a commodity. We're human beings. So different support, different routes into the profession, and look at the whole talent map. Those are the compelling things for me that businesses need to be thinking about.
And it's no wonder why you were crowned Social Mobility Champion of the Year when you tell us those stories. But you're able to make changes because you're in a position of power, and that's wonderful. But what about those organizations where people still aren't visible, still aren't seen? You want to change the way we recruit. You want to get rid of grade requirements for recruitment. You want to provide all this extra support. It's just going to be such hard work, isn't it?
There's a reason why I'm on this podcast and do the things that I do. It's to try and tell the basic story. I don't think there's anything desperately complicated. This is about doing the right thing. It's about responsible capitalism. It's about making your business more successful. We work with entrepreneurs. We work with the public sector. We work with all sorts of people. We will be successful if we represent the society around us. And the society around us isn't a bunch of people who went to posh universities and had privilege growing up. Society around us, our clients, everything around us is a broad church. That's why I keep talking about this topic, just to make it really clear to everybody. It's not difficult. It's just common sense.
May, it's not difficult. It's just common sense. Give us your thoughts on this and tips and advice to businesses tuning in today who actually want to make a difference but don't know where to start.
Okay. I really love all the points that Malcolm brought up, but I think what I'm going to add is that where businesses must step in, they can't just step in as donors. They have to step in as co-architects of the educational system. So I think they need to start thinking of how can they move beyond CSR partnerships into real partnerships. So how can businesses help shape the curricula to reflect real world needs? How can they provide access to tools and technology? How can they create broader pathways through internships, apprenticeships, and entry-level opportunities? And then, because I've seen the work that happens on the ground where people who are trained with industry relevant skills and are given the opportunity to apply those skills, they move faster up the ladder because they're able to move from learning to earning and contributing to economic development much faster. So that makes the transition easily transformative. I think businesses bring a proximity to execution and real world consequences because they understand how ideas move from concepts to impact under pressure, at scale, in response to real demand. And that practical intelligence is what can help education systems become more aligned with the realities of the people that they actually bring into the organizations. So really, I think they need to move more from a peripheral approach to more of a central approach. They need to invest, they need to collaborate, and they need to take shared ownership of outcomes in the educational sector.
Yes, and I suppose businesses need support as well. It is one thing. They want to do well, as I said, they want to make things change, but they need advice, and that sharing of knowledge and the podcast today will really help with that. You've identified a few key areas there, but from your perspective, what are the biggest gaps between what businesses need right now and what education in its current form? And I know globally it varies and from country to country. But what are the biggest gaps between what businesses need and what education currently provides? And how then can that collaboration close those gaps?
So I think I'll mention 3 major gaps that I see every day. The first one is the relevance gap. So you have young people who are graduating, they have the theoretical knowledge, but little exposure to real world application. So they can pass exams, but they haven't necessarily solved real world problems. So they need industry tools. They need to learn how to work in teams under real world constraints. So and that's why I mentioned earlier that businesses need to help shape curricula with educational institutions so you can bridge the relevance gap. Then the next is the exposure gap. There are a lot of underserved youths that simply do not even know that these opportunities exist. And Malcolm mentioned that there's so many people hiring, but they only go to certain environments and certain schools. So they need to start thinking about where are the underserved communities, where can we recruit in these communities, and go into those places and start to recruit and start to train and start to mentor people. And then there's also the confidence and the access gap. So even when you teach underserved youth skills, they still lack the networks and the mentorship and even the platforms to convert those skills into income and employment. And we cannot ignore the fact that employment biases happen. And so people look down on people from those communities or those backgrounds. So, with mentorship and then with the right networks, they can, overcome those barriers. So I think we need to really have a stronger collaboration where, we're able to collapse these gaps so that school and work can kind of become like the same place. It's not like two different places. We're all learning, we're all growing. And if we can just try to bridge those gaps by working together in close partnerships, I think we'll be able to make more progress.
And Malcolm, your thoughts, please, on that.
I couldn't agree more. I think if I look back on my own journey, mentorship was fundamental to it. People taking me aside, talking to me about what was important and my own journey and my own career. And it's something that we do. We do these social mobility tea breaks where we get people together to talk about issues that they face. I'm bringing alive what May said. There are real live issues. We still have something called accent bias in this country, where how you speak is perceived by many to be more important than what you're actually saying. So you need real granular, down in the weeds actions to talk to people about these issues. One of the most silly things that I did, which I thought would help me be successful, and sadly it might be true, was to learn to speak with a different accent. I'm from Yorkshire. My accent originally is very different to the one that I have today. I changed it to try and fit in. I don't want people to have to do that anymore. So that's real granular action.
That's amazing. I thought that perhaps that had changed, maybe with the Big Brother. Lots of regional accents was becoming quite cool to have a different accent. But you say that is still a real barrier there, and there's still those biases that exist.
Look, it's not. I mean, I'm the oldest person on this call by a long way, so I grew up in a time when it was a bit less regional. But it's still an issue. It's still an issue today, just not as big.
I'd love to go to some examples. May, you mentioned that it's only by seeing the transformation that, hearing the stories, understanding the difference that access, that dignity, that agency, that confidence, that mentoring, that, to see the change that has on lives. I would love if you could share some of those examples with us.
Sure. So I like to talk about this story. Her name is Elizabeth. So the first time she actually touched a computer was in our digital skills lab, and she was about 15, 16 at this time. And literally her fingers were trembling on the keyboard. She couldn't turn on a computer. She couldn't type. And 3 months later, because our digital literacy program is a 3-month program, she was not just typing, she was coding, building web pages, doing graphic designs to help her family's small business. And she was also teaching other girls in the community how to navigate a computer and how to code. And I think for me, it was just the transformation from seeing someone whose hands is trembling, who was about to cry because she didn't know how to operate a computer, to now teaching girls with so much confidence and talking about her future with so much confidence. So for me, it's like that transformation up close just does something to you, and you're like, we need to do more of this at scale. And there's also this story of this other woman, Mrs. Babalola. She was actually homeless. She was squatting in a church with 3 of her children. Her children had to stop school because her husband left her. But then we took her in, we coached her, did business coaching, provided her a small grant. And recently she sat down with me, and in tears, she was like, I can now pay for my house rent and pay the tuition of my kids. Thank you for bringing out what I didn't know I had in me. So it's that confidence, that dignity restored. Like now I can rent an apartment. Now I can pay for my children's tuition. Now I'm earning this amount of money to live a better life. I didn't know I was capable of doing that. But now I know, right? And she's thinking bigger of how to expand her business and how to, send her children to college as well. So you can see the ripple effect, like Malcolm mentioned, happening in the family. Her daughter too went from a failing grade to having distinctions just because of that change in her mom's life. So all of these things, when you see them up close, you think about just with little efforts here and there, little intentional efforts, we can actually change the trajectory of someone's life, their family's life, and the community.
Absolutely. And it could have easily gone the other way, couldn't it? If you
Exactly.
hadn't have just cared and staged a little bit of an intervention then and built that woman up to feel like she could hold her head up and be proud of herself, because that's often affects a lot of people that, they can't look people in the eyes. They don't feel equal.
Exactly.
Malcolm, can you share any examples with us of the work closer to home that you've done and the transformation that you've seen?
Um, so many, I don't know where to start. If I go to the very top of our organisation and our leadership team, my leadership team, a third of them didn't go to university. Third are the first people in their family to go to university. So it goes right the way through the business from the top to the bottom. We have we do this Access Accountancy program where we bring in people and give them an internship. One of the most inspirational days of the year is when I get to go along to that and we talk to the group and I hear them talking about where they are in their life and the fact that they can't quite believe that they're in an office and they've got a pass to be in the office for the day. And they're hearing people talk to them and want them to be successful. Those days are always incredibly moving. It wouldn't be fair on me to name names, but yeah, so many examples.
And how do we make sure that social mobility stays on the agenda? How do we make sure that it stays a priority for everyone? At a time where, let's face it, the world is a little bit up the left. Malcolm.
This podcast is a start. Every one of us needs to carry on talking, keep on talking about the issue and not let it go away. If you look at some of the challenges that exist in the country that I sit in, many of them go back to the very core, the fact that power is focused in the hands of people who aren't diverse. People feel that they haven't got a voice, that people aren't being represented. The more we talk about this agenda, the more that we genuinely change lives, that changes communities. It's fundamental. It's everybody's responsibility to talk about the issue. When we first started talking about it, I remember internally people were saying, why do you want to know about my education? Why do you want to know about my family? It's nothing to do with you. It's about collecting data and proving that you're making a difference, because that is an inspiration to others to give data and to make a difference. So it begins with us.
And May, your expertise has made you a much sought after voice. You speak all the time. You've been interviewed by BBC News. You've given TED Talks. You've been recognized with the Clinton Global Initiative at The Guardian. It is about talking about it all of the time, getting front and center, and for people to actually be engaged and listening. Talking's one thing, but they have to be listening.
Mm, yes.
So
So,
I'm just
sorry, you can
sorry,
go
May,
ahead.
I spoke over you there.
Oh, no, no, no. I was just going to go off something that Malcolm said. Yeah, we need to talk about it. But then you mentioned something critical. We need to get people to actually listen and then take action. So we need to become more creative with how we're doing storytelling, how we're presenting data, understanding that we have a wide array of audience who are watching it. Some people prefer videos, some people like to see designs, graphics, comics. So we need to figure out how can we be more creative in storytelling? How can we show our impact in such a way that we're capturing people's attention, and after capturing their attention, we're moving them to actually take action.
I'd love to know if you have any questions you'd like to ask each other. May, do you have a question for Malcolm?
Yes, I do.
Go on then.
Sure. So I think in a world where ESG is becoming a standard for investment, how can we evolve our global accounting and business frameworks to move beyond just seeing social impact as a line item for charity and instead, value it as a strategic investment in the world's future human capital? So moving from
I mean, that's
charity to strategic investment.
look, it's an amazing question. And you're right, it still is a line item. It is still something typically which businesses will do 2 or 3 paragraphs at the front end of their accounts and some pictures about what they do. I think it's around measurement. Businesses tend to do what they're measured on. So I would say it's about measuring your impact in terms of how you bring people in, what backgrounds do they come from, and then measuring pay and progression. We've talked about getting in, I've talked about getting on and belonging, but pay and progression are fundamental. If you bring in people from broad backgrounds and you measure how quickly they progress and how much you're paying them versus their peers, that will produce, I suspect, uncomfortable statistics, which will force people to confront the fact that they need to become different. So I'd love to see a global measurement of where you're bringing people in from and how quickly they're progressing versus their peers and what you're paying them. Because those intentional decisions about promotion and pay, I think, will force businesses to confront some uncomfortable truths.
Those are great points. Noted.
And Malcolm, would you have a question for May?
Yeah, look, May's story is amazing and inspirational. In 21, when you started your business, can you tell me, how long did you think about it before you did it? And what made you be brave and go for it?
Go for it. So I started thinking about it actually when I was in high school in Nigeria. So my family used to have this small gift shop and I used to help my mom run the business. And so one time she put me in charge of hiring. But then for the job, you have to be a high school graduate and then I have to test and interview them. And then I was still a high school student and I was able to do that. And then I saw that a lot of the candidates who came in could barely read, write, or think coherently. So it was a simple test, but they were all failing. And then I noticed a pattern. All of them went to under-resourced schools. But then there was this particular lady who kept coming back, kept crying, kept begging me that she really needed a job for her family to survive. But I couldn't employ her because she wasn't qualified for the job. And I'm an empath, so I made a promise to God that day that even though I couldn't help this young lady, I would definitely help many like when I become a millionaire. But newsflash, I wasn't a millionaire at 21. I'm not one now. But then getting to Cornell, getting that scholarship, I was reminded about my privilege and I was reminded about the vow that I made. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to start this now. And that's how we kickstarted the organization.
It's fascinating. I speak to our young people a lot, and I'm often asked, what's the one thing that you'd encourage us to do? And I always use one word, which is curiosity. And it's fascinating. At the heart of your story, you looked at something and were curious about why it was what it was, and then you went on to try and make it different. Curiosity is a fundamental skill for successful people. And it's amazing your journey began with curiosity, and incredible.
And then just seeing it through. I mean, loads of us have, I would love to make a difference. I'm going to do this. And then we don't. But May, you are incredible. You really are.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing everything with us today. I'm just wondering as well, we asked the same final 2 questions to each of our guests on the lens. And staying with the topic maybe of social mobility, if you could encourage our listeners to read one piece of research or one report or one book or listen to another podcast that has inspired you to be more responsible in this area, what would it be, Malcolm?
I'd encourage you to look in the UK at the Bridge Group website. The Bridge Group do some amazing research, and also Social Mobility Foundation produce some amazing research. So I go to the Bridge Group website and Social Mobility Foundation. We work with both groups, are proud to do so. they do the right thing year in, year out in terms of progressing this agenda and challenging us all to do something different. So I go to those two.
Great. Okay. And some good advice there as well. If you want to improve how you recruit, how you make sure that people are encouraged to shine. May, what about you?
For me, it would be the World Bank's Learning to Realize Education's Promise. It's one of their reports, and it confronts the idea that, schooling is not the same as learning. So I think for me, what that did to me, it challenged the common assumption in development work that we have to move from just building schools, providing tools, to actually measuring outcomes and transformation. Like Malcolm mentioned, those are the things that actually, so we need to focus more on when students come into school, are they actually learning? When they leave school, what does their life look like? What does their income look like? What does their socioeconomic mobility look like? So I think that challenges us, and it had also helped me, say no to certain partnerships that are more focused on optics rather than outcomes, and just, do our work in such a way that for every child that enters, we're able to see how their life has changed and how their life has transformed.
Yes, and I suppose every single one of us should be challenging our biases, looking at how judgmental we are, whether, if we don't realize it, and thinking differently, doing differently, acting differently as a result of this. So great suggestions there. The final question to each of you, as responsible leaders, and we know that you are, you've demonstrated that very clearly. What are you personally committed to doing more of or less of in the coming year? May.
Okay, more of protecting my capacity so that I'm able to focus on the work that leads to real lasting outcomes. So not just activity for optics, but actually real outcomes. And I'm very intentional now about like the partnerships I enter, the platforms I engage with. And then I also prioritize self-care and rest because I realize that I cannot pour from an empty cup. At the end of the day, the quality of my impact will always be tied to the quality of my well-being. And I'm choosing to do both of them intentionally, my well-being and the impact that I'm making.
Definitely protecting your capacity is extremely important. So absolutely. Malcolm, what about you?
Building on May's theme, I'm really intentional about where I spend my time. There are many, many different calls on your time. When you get to a certain position in business, people are always wanting to talk to you about things, but I'm really intentional. I have a set of life goals in terms of where I want to spend my time. And at the end of every week, I look forward for the next 4 weeks and I look at where I'm spending my time and is it consistent with my life goals? And that means being challenging and saying no to a lot of things. You have to say no to say yes. I couldn't agree more. You can't pour from an empty cup. So I don't allow myself to be overstretched in terms of too many commitments. The worst day imaginable for me is Teams meeting followed by call, followed by in-person meeting, and you don't get any time to think. Time to think is fundamental to me. So intentionality and creating time to think, that allows you to make the best difference that you can.
I love that. And I hope everybody is listening and making sure that they look in their diaries and see a little bit of space in there. Protect your time. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to each of you today, each of you champions for social mobility in different ways. And thank you for sharing this conversation. It's been a joy. So you have been listening to The Lens with me, Sarah Travers. If your business would like support to be stronger in supporting your people, the planet, or the places in which you are located, then please visit www.bitc.org.uk. My thanks again to our guests and thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.